Welcome to Indy Period, powered by Your Time Network. One topic, one perspective, a deeper look at the conversation shaping sports. We're talking the headlines, the strategy, leadership, front office decisions, college athletics, pro sports, and the media narratives. We'll tell you where we agree and where we disagree, but most importantly, why. Because the game deserves more than a reaction, it deserves a perspective. You're now watching Indy. What's going on, man? Back for part two of Are You Hungry? Uh, this segment right here in this portion, as I mentioned, part one, I wanted to lay out the understanding of how other institutions have gone from their growth strategies of as small as an NAIA program like a Jacksonville State to a Division two, then to FCS, then to a Division one, playing in the Conference USA. I mean, uh, and just as this, as part one was released, then come across my feed, West Florida, a Division two program in Pensacola, Florida, then made the move up to Division one FCS program. Um, we can also look back at what Kennesaw State had done recently, who were briefly in the Big South OVC. They came from the Big South, but Big South OVC merged, and they made the move up, man. So when you're looking at growth and we're looking at trying to compete in this forever changing, evolving NCAA college football, the name of the game is honestly you're trying your best to get to that at bare minimum that group of five structure, where those dollars lie. But today we'll look into a couple things that show fruit, right? We'll talk about them. We'll talk about the SWAC, which is they deserve their flowers. We'll get into with that, but there's going to be other conferences that another conference I'm going to call out on that front as well too, man. But first, let me make sure to do some housekeeping here. We got to take care of. As always, thank you for checking in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Please stay tuned in. We got me and more of the fellas bring you more perspectives on all things college sports, pro sports. I know coming up, Curtis Davis. He's going to talk about some things with most recently within the NCAA and their ruling and their potential change with expanding of March Madness seeding to some more seats. He's going to talk through what does that look like for mid majors like Tennessee State and beyond. We got Bather. He's going to cover a very unique topic about youth sports and how it has turned into so much of a money grab, right? And we've lost the developmental structure within youth sports. So he's going to really hone in on that right there, man. So that's why we want you to stay locked and stay tuned in with us, man. More to come. Welcome to Your Time Network, your home for both sports, culture, and inspiration. Catch the excitement with Upper Radio Show, where we bring the energy of TSU sports to life. Dive deeper with Legends Unleashed, the intimate stories from the icons and trailblazers in sports. And join Indy Period, where we go one-to-one and we slow down, break down the biggest sports media conversations, and bring you a fresh perspective. Subscribe now and make your time count. But yeah, man, let's get into it. I'm gonna eventually show a graphic here on screen, and it's gonna highlight a lot of stuff, man. $160 million. That's the number we have to start with for today, man. Um, because it's not comfortable, not because it's easy to say out loud, and not because I want to attack HBCU athletics. It is it's just I want to be very clear from the beginning of part two on this that this is not an attack. This is just clearly a full audit. And as a supporter of its very own HBCU, the great Tennessee State University, but this is beyond Tennessee State. This is all for all HBCUs to truly be, as I said in part one, be aggressive in your actions, in your planning, and in your execution, and most importantly, be aggressive in how you adjust and how you monitor what's working, what's not working. So that's that. And then as an audit, I want to do this. I want to be serious about this, right? And what's most important is, I I want to do, I want us to stop explaining away the numbers. I want to make sure that um, we don't hide behind just traditions because we like to do that in HBCU environments. We like to hide behind traditions and hiding behind traditions. I just fully believe that hiding behind traditions cripple us in the long run, and it has crippled us, right? Because it's kept us from making the decisions to constantly evolve. And when you're looking at standard business practice, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in tech, big business, small business, to grow, to scale, it's about how are you evolving, and you have to evolve with what your climate is doing. And if you don't do that, you will be stuck. There's no way around that. As much as you would like to keep the status quo because it's all well and good, business just does not, and it will never work like that. It's going to evolve. You have to move with it. Those that stay idle get left behind. You know, uh, that's a fact of it. Got to keep it moving. So with that being said, I want to make sure that an audit is what you do when you are ready to build something and that can actually last. That's why you audit, right? You want to correct the things, you want to correct what's wrong, right? As you saw in part one, the mid majors built their empires and they're growing beyond us. We looked at the Sun Belt, we looked at the American Conference, Conference USA. We specifically looked at Jacksonville State. But as I highlighted as well previously, I mean, you got Kennesaw State that's made the jump, right? And then you've got West Florida that's been a unknown Division II program that got hot, this last year, 2 years here, 3 years, I believe it is. Well, last 6 years. It's been pretty good and consistently, but they make a plan to move like they're trying to do, right? And they jump up to the FCS level, right? So that's what they do. So they did not just say they wanted to win, right? In these spaces, um, um, they made the decision that they wanted to prove it, and that brings us to where we are right now in part two, man. In this front here, so big graphic on the screen, athletic budget and comparisons. Let's walk through what this really entails. All right. With the HBC audit, athletics has never had a culture problem. Right? We've never seen that in HBCU. It has never had a talent problem. It has never had an audience problem. The bands are there. The alumni are there. They're there. The rivalries are there. The history is there. The pride is there. The social media energy has been there. The national cultural relevance is there because we're still seeing it in good spots to where we could say that it's there. But the question is, for me, is going to always be, is the structure there? And that's when I get to this, right? And I've talked about how in a couple segments ago, when I was talking about specifically with Tennessee State, right? Should they make the move to leave the OVC, Big South Conference? And then I polled folks and I said, should we go SWAC, MEAC, or even independent, right? And it just comes down to there's more factors than just emotionally making a decision to do something. It is, what are your actions towards the decision, right? And that's what you have to be prepared to do. So, that's where this gets into about the structure. The revenue model, is it there? Um, in some cases, it's there for HBCUs. In some cases, I would argue that the revenue model is sitting on, it's like having a three-legged stool and you got one good leg. And if that leg is positioned in the right space and is staked into the ground, you're good to go, right? But that's what you're running into. You run into a three-legged stool with one good leg, and if it's positioned right, it can hold up. But is it going to allow it to really take itself to the highest level? No, it won't. Um, is the licensing strategy there? We're seeing that in a conference in the HBCU structure with the SWAC. They're getting to a good space in licensing. They got there. Is the NIL revenue share infrastructure there? Um, in totality, no, it's definitely not there. NIL is a evolving construct that, as I said in part one of this, that it's going to take real commitments from honestly key individuals and university administrators to understand how this entity can play a key role in one getting you talent and retaining talent. That's what you have to do in this space. Um, HBCUs have fallen into what they, and I'll say they meaning the fan bases, they expect these top end athletes to come to the HBCU just because, right? And I've had this conversation offline with so many folks saying that it's not fair for us as fans, and even me as a former player of HBCU, to ask them to, you know, overlook everything they see at not even a SEC or a Big Ten school, right? But at these Group of Five schools, when you're talking the living conditions of brand new dorms that they roll into, when you're looking at their training table structure, football program walks into its own cafeteria. The food is there lined out for them. A lot of times now what we're seeing in these Group of Five and Power Fives are these players are ordering their food from an app. It's prepped. They run by and pick it up in a sack, right? That's what we're seeing. And it's put together, and a lot of times it's put together, most times put together to their macro level, right? So if I'm a player, my macronutrients breakdown needs to be this per carb, this per fat, this per protein, right? It's giving them that. And they're watching this, right? And they're looking at training facilities of what the weight room looks like. They're looking at how they prepare for their sport. They're looking at how they return to sport. They're looking at all the things that make their experience a great decision. That's what they're looking at, right? And we're telling them to sacrifice and forgo all of that to come to the HBCU, and it's just not fair, right? That's like, imagine you have your child, or not even your child. Imagine you got a chance to go work at this really really strong company, right? They're a Fortune 50 company and thriving, and you get a chance to go there and to potentially be in a position where you get to thrive. They are smart in what they do. They evolve in what they do daily, and they execute on a daily basis from the top down, right? You get a chance to go to that company or stay here at this company that still doesn't evolve, right? They're just still with the status quo, running the rat race, getting to the next month, right? Getting to the next year. And we're asking these 18-year-old athletes, 19-year-old athletes to do that. And it's like, if you're a parent, right, and you're telling your kid, no, you gotta go to the right situation. You want to go to a winning situation, right? So for me, this audit is about getting us as supporters within these HBCUs to really get behind and push our institutions and their decision makers to be aggressive in what they do, right? If we want talent to come back and stay, we have to give them something to truly look forward to and to hold on to. We just can't just say because we're an HBCU. All right. That's just not fair, right? So let's keep this thing moving. Um, is the sponsorship engine there? In some cases, it's the opportunity of the sponsorship, I'll say is there, but has it been fully monetized? No. But is the opportunity there? It definitely is there. Is the leadership alignment there? I would say across all HBCUs, leadership alignment is not there. It's in pockets, right? You have a portion of leaderships that see it and they want to go off and get their job done right, and they go do it. But then there's another section of the university that's not in the same room, right? And they're working in silos. And then alumni comes in and they want to work with it, but they're trying to figure out how do they fit into this holistic circle, right? That's going to make everything just rise. You know, that's what we're looking to do. So I would say the leadership alignment just in totality just isn't there. But that's where we need to start from, right? So for me, culture can fill a stadium on one Saturday, but structure is what funds programs, man. Um, we have to get to the point to where we have to get to the point to where the structure is in place, and until then, this is what I believe is we're going to potentially see um, in the HBCU space. If your program gets hot and they're winning and they're looking good on Saturday, then naturally you're going to start to see more support drive in, right? But God forbid that coach gets really good, he gets another opportunity to move up, right? He moves up, and what happens? You reset. Everything goes back to a lot of times square one in a lot of instances. Um, and that's the portion where I say when your internal infrastructure is truly in place, that coach should be able to leave and you should be able to retain 70% of the structure to keep things in place to where when the next coach comes in, they're like, hey, this is what stays the same. All right. This is where you evolve us from. So that would be my guidance on that. So culture feels the moment, structure funds the future, right? So I think it is we as we've said this, culture is there, but we have to move beyond culture. To me, culture is like the folks who are clamoring for Tennessee State to make that decision to leave its current conference, right? And I'm just like, there's still so much to be done right now of what we can control. And let's take advantage of that while we build towards being able to be in a position of making a sound decision and not just running because of XYZ. Um, and this is where this is where we have to be honest in so much of this stuff, right? We love our schools, we defend our schools, we post about our schools, right? We ever get a chance to post good about them. And I'm one of them that does it too. I don't care what school it is. When I say school, like at Tennessee State, it could be the School of Engineering, it could be the School of Agriculture, the pre-med program at the Dr. Levi Watkins Jr. Institute. It can be College of Business, Health Sciences, communications, and that whole team over there. It doesn't matter if I see something that those students were able to do successfully, I'm going to defend it. I'm going to promote it, man. Like that's what we do. We definitely argue for our schools externally, right? So it's like we understand that as alumni that uh, this is where things can be. But but for me, it's I want to make sure that this conversation is beyond that. It's about being able to um go beyond just the emotion of this stuff, right? So so from that standpoint on, as we got this graphic that's on screen right here, man, and we're gonna really look into these numbers real quick here, man. So let me scroll over here. Gotta get my notes back up. I'm flipping through here. Um, let's make it sure. Okay, there we go. So SWAC is proving that, as I talked about this, right? So we talked about in segment one here. We talked through the ups and downs of this stuff from what the HBCU audit looks like, right? So let's look here. SWAC is proving that HBCU auditions are real. Okay, they are measurable. They are monetizable. That's all good there. SWAC TV is the strongest proof point for this, right? 26.9 million minutes watched. Wow. Salute. 895,000 unique viewers. Salute. Achieved the first achieved this in the first 2.5 months. Double salute to that. Compared to ESPN's prior full year SWAC total of 20.2 million minutes watched, The audience was never the problem. It was the missing piece was the infrastructure. So as you've seen right here, right? So the SWAC financial turnaround 6 years ago, right? A $5.2 million budget with a $2 million deficit. Then we get to fiscal year 2025, a $25.5 million total budget and a $15.9 million. That's 62% distributed back to member schools right there. 62% of the 15 million was distributed back to the schools. Give the SWAC their credit. Salute to the SWAC on that. But do not let one conference success hide school level structural problems, right? Because although for the SWAC in totality, that's what it's done. It's ultimately being carried roughly by I would say three of those schools within the SWAC that are like truly carrying the weight of that. And so quick sidebar. Outside of outside of what we see right here from the SWAC and this, I want to call out another one. The Missouri Valley Conference. Uh they are number two just behind the SWAC when it comes to this stuff. So they are the gold standard for on-field FCS quality. Their media deal reflects it. Their ESPN deal is totally different than I think most FCS levels, right? So a multi-year extension, they signed back in 2023. As I'm looking at some of these notes here, runs through 2029. Um, what's this next one? Uh, uh, okay, linear TV minimum 9 games a year on ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPNU, right? So for for a FCS program, a conference in the FCS, when you can go off and tell the student athletes that they're coming to one of the schools in the Missouri Valley, right? We're talking your North Dakota State, your South Dakota State, South Dakotas, all of those. Montana's, all of those right there, right? We're talking all those conferences right there, all those teams right there. You're going to get 9 games a year that's on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU. We're not talking about ESPN Plus, right? We're not talking about those. That is an extra service that people have to pay for to get. We're talking about the three big ones that live in your standard cable package, right? So, as an FCS program, you're getting a great opportunity to play a nationally televised game, right? And get multiple eyes across different markets watching your games. So that's there. Streaming 8 games of the week packages for ESPN Plus, plus all 65 home games streamed in 2024. Phenomenal work for them. Their sponsor ad value because ESPN pays production costs on linear games. Those are true revenue gains for their conference. It's not cost sharing arrangements. So unlike the rest of the SCS, if you're in the Missouri Valley, your conference is actually getting paid from ESPN in a much different way. Why this matters because the Missouri Valley Conference has the deepest on-field brand in FCS, right? So as I said, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana State, Illinois State. We just saw that in the national championship game this past December with Illinois State and Montana State. Two teams from the same conference in the national championship game right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Phenomenal showing by them. Which commands real linear inventory. That's the leverage that most FCS conferences just don't have. So there are some other ones that look pretty good in that level. The Colonial Athletic League, CAA, Big Sky Conference is another solid one, and the SoCon South Conference. Those typically show out pretty well in those spaces, man. But that's what we're looking into, right? So for me, in segment two here, the big takeaway is going to be own media gives HBCUs audience data, revenue control, and their leverage, right? So you have to continue to put yourselves in positions to own all of your stuff, your media rights, but then also continue to make your media more valuable. You can't just settle in on, okay, we had a good year, we found our rhythm, right? We're gonna stick right here. In a world where things are changing and coaches are leaving for more resourcing because that's what this is, right? That coach wants to have more people on staff to do more things so they can be more successful on a Saturday. That's what this is about. And on the FCS level, you're limited in that space. You know, uh, FBS programs are having, at least 30 coaches, what it looks like in some cases. And some are like truly on field coaches, some are not on field coaches, some are strictly just off field looking at film, reviewing film, helping put together game plans 2 and 3 weeks in advance. When on the FCS level, typically you're doing game plans. If you can structure it out, right, you can do a game plan a week in advance, but it's not a detailed one. It's just a get you started game plan, and you don't start the real game plan until that Saturday after your game and that early Sunday morning, right? So when folks are looking at coaches and why coaches are leaving, it comes to that, right? So this revenue, as you're growing your resourcing, which is why it's imperative that, um, particularly with the SWAC, because they've really figured it out in this spaces. Now it's like, okay, let's keep this growth going. Let's keep scaling this more and more and more, requiring your athletic institutions to create more value, right? Finding a way to support them and pushing them to be more and more and more. And I think I would even ask. So I think there are a couple SWAC schools that are out there that I'm not going to say go play a Power Four school, but go ahead and put you a solid Group of Five program on your schedule. You know, go show your stuff even more to create that brand and get that reach out there more and more, right? Because you're doing a great job internally, right? I think you figured that out. But now let's find the right Group of Five program to go play against to spread those wings even some more to really show your stuff that you're not just good within your own pool. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. We're gonna look at these six revenue gaps. All right, I think these six revenue gaps play a huge role in how you want to maneuver, as I just previously mentioned about being more aggressive and how you do this thing here, right? So, stadium rights. Most HBCU stadiums, matter of fact, none of them have a corporate naming right partner. And in athletics now, everything's up for sale, right? I'm talking the stadium should be up for sale. The name on the locker room should be up for sale. The name on the practice field should be up for sale. If you got an indoor facility, the name on that should be up for sale. Because all of that stuff has upkeep and maintenance that's needed for it. So if you can get a sponsor to be up on that, have their name right there, and you're constantly doing media from those spaces where those companies can see value in their name being seen in video and print media, not just, hey, we're on the what you typically see in athletics is you'll see whoever sponsors an athletic institution, they're on the front page of the website, or depending on who it is, they might be in like that athletic institutions email somewhere in there as well too, right? But give them real prime time video. We're in a stage where video is king, right? I was taught this about 10, 15 years ago that video is king now, right? When you can create the video and you can get it out there, that's going to speak much more than your standard text, digital, print is going to do for you, right? So, video is king. The main point in this first one is that the assets exist, the revenue structure often just does not, right? So you put it out there, and if I read correctly, I believe now colleges can pretty much have naming rights on game jerseys. If I read that correctly, don't quote me on that. I'll have to follow back up, but I'm pretty sure that I read that. If not, but I'll make sure we follow up to get that for you as well too. But we're talking about game jerseys, practice jerseys, very similar to what you see in the NFL, right? You have a company that is the sponsor for instance, right? Prime example, NFL, you got the Tennessee Titans here in Nashville. St. Thomas is a large healthcare system here that's in the city, right? And the Titans practice facility is named St. Thomas Sports Park. So you see that right there. Then on all Titans practice jerseys, you see St. Thomas Health Systems or whatever it is, hey, St. Thomas right here on the jerseys, on all practice jerseys, right? That is a big naming right. That is more money coming into you, right? So you're not just totally depending on a ticket sale on a Saturday or a tailgate sale on a Saturday to get you through, right? You have to open up every possibility that's out there to bring in that revenue for your actual institutions to where it'll help, coaching staff stay in. So as you talk about this, on number two, the merchandise and licensing. HBCU brands have major cultural influence, man. I've seen so many folks who didn't even go to an HBCU, but because that HBCU is in their city, they'll rep it. They'll go to your bigger schools, your PWIs, right? They'll go to these schools and they'll still rep that HBCU. That's where they're from. Like this kid might be from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they'll sport a Winston-Salem State University sweater, hoodie. That's where they're from. You could go to some school in Georgia, but or not even Georgia. You can go on the West Coast, right? Somewhere where there are zero HBCUs, and you'll see that person wearing a Spelman or a Clark Atlanta, right? You'll see that. You'll see Tennessee State sweaters in these spaces out here, right? So it's like because that's where they're from. They'll sport it because it matches the outfit. So it's like you have some really good cultural influence, man. But too much of that value is not, I would say, just not captured by athletics. And I would say these athletic institutions need to begin to truly own their merchandise. All right, that's a revenue opportunity that's right there for you. How you get to that point, it is, I would say it's somewhere around those dollars that you make through revenue. You set aside monies for merchandise and you find the right partner to help you push that merchandise. When I say push, meaning help you sell it as well as all the back end support that goes with merchandise, right? You got some drop shipping and things like that run a cost, and right. And if you can't necessarily get the items out on time and communicate that it's been shipped, all that good stuff there, right? That's where you bring in the right partner to do all that legwork for you. But the most importantly, you're getting good customer engagement. So now that's showing people that you're trusted in this space. So you're trusted here, you're going to be trusted in these other opportunities. And again, that leads into the next one, donor wealth gap, man. Let's be honest here. This is not a loyalty problem. It's a generational wealth problem. Um, HBCUs cannot wait for the wealth gap to close before building revenue systems. Alternative structures, alternative structures, corporate partners, media revenue, merchandise licensing, naming rights, game week campaigns. HBCUs are lacking on a game week campaign. I can honestly say over the past 5 or 6 years, I've been to multiple HBCU campuses before the game, like in the midweek before, and there's no push for it on campus. At least from what I saw, I didn't see anybody set up trying to make sure that they're encouraging students and folks around to come by the game. I think from what I saw, it was your standard. You might see some things on some wall posts somewhere in some buildings, or if you're watching, if you're watching the websites, right? If you just happen to be listening to local radio, depending on who you are, because we're in a space where now so many people have non-linear radio, XM radio, and if you're not doing ads on there, then and you're just only doing it on local radio stations, then you're still missing out on people. So it's like you have to be able to old school style, man. Create that. This is when I say old school works. Those what we call them, those street teams, man. You need those students in certain majors. They should be running your weekly campaigns, right? So getting commitments from students, making sure they know, like if it's you know going through this gate, right? Or we're going to give you these shirts to wear, or you're going to rush the field. We're going to be in this section, and right, we're going to do this in quarter one. We're going to do this in quarter three, quarter four, we're going to walk them through this thing, push, push, push. Make this become the norm. And you have to make each game that you got on campus be like a game that all students need to be at, right? You have to do that. You just can't wait for the right game to then want to push. Every week you have to find the energy and the structure and intensity to do that. All right. Let's move on to number four, NIL collectives. National NIL spending exploded, but HBCU NIL tracking and infrastructures are still underdeveloped. As I mentioned, you probably got less than a handful of those who've really put something together in that space from an NIL standpoint, not a revenue share, which is a different topic, right? NIL is truly outside entities bringing in outside dollars to help find those specific players. Okay. The House settlement creates new direct payment possibilities, but most HBCUs do not have the revenue base to compete at that cap level, right? So that's what you run into on that. SWAC TV matters because own revenue can support NIL distributions. My main point in section four is this: if NIL is not just money, NIL is not just money, it's infrastructure, it's compliance, it's reporting, it's marketplace design. Let's see that, right? On to number five, guaranteed games. Guaranteed games provide real money, but they are a ceiling, not a long-term strategy. Example, right? Savannah State generated 855K in one season from guaranteed games. Okay, that was Savannah State. South Carolina State received $275,000 for their game versus Clemson, right? South Carolina State received $275,000 from Clemson. First of all, that's a crime. Clemson, you're in the ACC, and you play South Carolina State, which is in South Carolina, and I know that they're not far apart, right? But you just played them and gave them 275K. The danger for schools to become financially dependent on games where they are paid to absorb losses, man, is just that strategy is not fair to those student athletes. It's not fair. As I mentioned in part one of this in this series, going from a program that has 62 scholarships that they can spread out any way they want to playing against schools who have 85 full ride scholarship players. You ain't playing the same game. You're not. And one, I wish South Carolina State would have found a way to get more than that from Clemson. Honestly, Clemson can afford to do much more than that. And for me, I see why most of your HBCUs, especially in the SWAC, they're not playing these Power Four conferences because, like, why am I going to play a Power Four school to take, as you see right there, that's 275. And to my understanding, this year when Tennessee State plays Georgia down in Athens, I think that payout is like 700,000, somewhere higher, lower, so in that space, right? So, I mean, that's still not enough in my opinion because I mean they're a superior team. You're talking about a program that's going to be ranked top five in the nation, a program that's going to play in the FCS, I mean, in the FBS playoffs, right? A program that is operating off of a $62 million budget, right? And Tennessee State athletics as a whole is operating off 14 million, 12 million, but somewhere in between there, right? Come on, man. So it's gonna take more than that, right? So that's why you gotta get in these spaces. And the main point that I want to drive home from this is guaranteed money as seed capital, right? But not as the operating model. So it's my hope that the decision makings that when an HBCU does play a power four school, Pac 12, SEC, ACC, Big Ten, when they playing those, that like this is seed money for us, right? But we're not depending on this to make books, right? To make our monies to pay off our debts, right? It's like this is seed money for the future. So if you're in that space and you can pick and choose them the right way, but again, if folks are paying, if Clemson's paying that much, I'm pretty sure South Carolina State could have went and played, you know, Charlotte, University of Charlotte, or somebody like that for that level of money. Like Clemson got away. Clemson got off real cheap with that. They got off real cheap with that. On to number 6, the classics, man. I think the classics are our true in HBCU space, one of our probably our strongest asset because those classics, all those classics, you're talking 50,000 plus, right? 50,000 plus. If in some cases more than 50,000. Classes are cultural, tent poles, but remain under monetized. Because when I say remain under monetized, because they do a good job of selling the tickets, but it's like, who's the name on it? Who's the name on that classic? And did we lock them in for 2 years, 3 years, right? What are we making sure that we can provide for that classic for that week? Although people who come into that city, whether it's the Bayou Classic in New Orleans, whether it's the Magic City Classic between Bama State and Bama A&M, whether it's the Florida Classic between FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, whether it's the Soul Bowl between Jackson State and Alcorn, or if it's Tennessee State versus Jackson State, Tennessee State versus FAMU. All of these spaces here, even in Nashville at the John Merritt Classic, right? No one in HBCU has what Tennessee State has in the John Merritt Classic. A top 3 going city. You got the healthcare capital of the country, and you got big tech moving into to the city here, right? So the real estate of the John Merritt Classic can really be something where Tennessee State is going to have an opponent on schedule that they're really going to compete well against, have a great chance of winning, and you're in a city that when you present that to them, they should get behind if the powers that be are presenting that in such a way of saying, hey, this is year 1, this we're going to project towards year 2 of this, and this is where I want the city to come into play. Drive it like that, man. I think that's how we get to this point of making this thing work. Okay. All right. So let's get this thing rolling, man, as we move on. The last thing I want to get to here, man, is this blueprint. All right. Um, right here. So this blueprint is a key piece. In this blueprint, we want to make sure that um we walk these final steps of how this thing should play out, right? Um the blueprint, and we see it here on the screen. I do not do not build around the idea that another celebrity coach is going to come and thinking that that's what it takes. I think what the Coach Prime Deion Sanders era showed us at Jackson State is you have to be one aggressive, and then two, your baseline is you as your coach have to fully believe in the capabilities of yourself, your staff, and your players, and you have to push it like you believe it, right? If you're talking about your program like, well, this is what we are and this is what we did in the past, right? And as players, you go recruit like, just give us a shot. Think about us, right? Or if your approach is, look here, you come here, this is what I'm gonna provide to you. This is what I'm gonna make sure you again. I know I can't offer you what this school in the Conference USA, the ACC, the Big Ten, Pac-12, all these schools, I can't offer you what they're giving you on so many of these levels, right? One thing I know I'm gonna be able to do is fully take care of you mentally, make sure that you're fully prepared for the next level, right? Because I know you're a next level kid. And even if you're not a next level kid, hey, I know I'm going to still be able to prepare you for your next step in life, right? When you leave up out of here, right? You walk up in these rooms, sitting on those phones with these athletes, and you're talking with true confidence. These kids are seeing that. And ultimately, If you can show them that you can develop them and you got the proof in it and you got the cachet in it, you'd be surprised how many of these kids that choosing to go to a bigger school just to sit on the bench would come to an HBCU, right? But when your approach to recruiting is, well, I already know you got all these other schools on you, right? But if something changed, look us up. That lack of confidence and uncertainty plays heavily on these young athletes right here, man. So step one, the presidential and board level commitment, right, in these spaces of the black colleges. Uh, from those levels, athletics must be stated as an institutional priority. All right, there's no way around it. It has to be stated as an institutional priority. We're talking about it's the number one money driver outside of student enrollment, right? It's the number one money driver. So in business, if this makes me money, I keep feeding it to where I can grow it from there. And then I take off in spaces to give to other things that don't necessarily make me money, but need some enhancements, right? But ultimately, this is my revenue driver. I got to keep feeding that, and I got to make that commitment to do that. I can't ask these spaces to operate off of less than what others they got to play against operate off of, right? So let's get aggressive in these spaces, HBCUs. From there, your ADs and their vision and their political capital have to be in a space that ignites the donors, the media, the corporate private sectors, and the internal influences to operate as one machine, right? One solid fist that moves together and just breaks through these walls. Make one credibility move early, right? So for me, is this: find a way to find something significant within your athletic institution to give it a naming rights deal. Whether that's whether that's a facility announcement of someone putting their name on there, whether that's a major coaching hire, if that's the case, right? Or a visible commercial move that puts you in this position, whatever that is. But make that one credibility move early as you can. Let's look at step four here. Invest in facilities before you need them, man. Um, this is what has been a problem of HBCUs. Um, the investment doesn't come until so much is breaking at the seams when it comes to where coaches' offices are, where players' locker rooms are, where they live, like all of this stuff. The HBCU way is if there's nothing wrong with it, if it's still working, it's livable, right? It's workable, then thumbs up. All right. We're not gonna spend money there. Right. But again, that's what gets you in the space that you're in now. Because you wait for something to fully break down. Prime example, here in Nashville, Tennessee State, we made the decision to um, you know, partner and go in on this deal with the original Titan Stadium back in '99. And um although it benefited us for John Merritt Classic and homecoming, but outside of that, it didn't benefit us. I mean, homecoming that year in '99, the number was somewhere over 50,000 was at that game. The John Merritt Classic that year was somewhere between like 35 and 40,000 at that game, right? But then the rest of your home games were, under somewhere between like 5 and 10,000. A couple were above that, right? But it's just, you know, you're still in a stadium that seats 76,000 people. And for the life of me, it's simply this: when you make a move to do some things, you have to be willing to upkeep and get back to where you were, right? So that way you don't get stuck like we currently are. Is now in a space where it's going to take a serious commitment across our leadership to find a way to ultimately just tear down what's left of that condemned stadium and build upon it, right? That's what it's going to take. And that's a lot of money that's going to have to be invested in as well too. But it starts with being actionable, aggressive, and letting the folks know who can help you get to these spaces. Letting them know, putting that small team together, internal, external stakeholders, get them to that point. Um, Step five, add sports strategically, right? So compliance decisions should also create competitive opportunities. So when we talk about adding sports strategically, um, what's growing in sports? Flag football, flag football. It doesn't. It's not going to cost an athletic department money like that. You know, it's very manageable. And that's something that you can add in there, man. So as teams, as schools are adding men's and women's, specifically women's flag football, that's something you want to get behind. That is something you want to get behind, man. I would definitely look into that. And hell, I would even look into seeing what pickleball is doing, because pickleball has gotten so strong in the country that that's another one that doesn't cost you much, but it has um a great following and support base. So women's flag football and just pickleball have great um spaces of support. And again, you're in for specifically for Tennessee State, you're in Nashville. That weighs heavily on so many people. And then the last one I want to say on this one is um build the media footprint intentionally. Build the media footprint intentionally, all right? Treat every broadcast, stream, social clip, and platform as a brand impression, right? Every time you post something, it has to be with intention. So, for HBCUs out there in these spaces, when you post, it needs to drive back to a revenue opportunity. Every time you post, if it's a video clip, I need something at the end of that video clip that says purchase a ticket here or next game on this date here. Needs to be that. Everything has to be with real purpose to it, man. And ultimately for me, man, as we look at this, man, my final takeaways are going to be this. A serious athletic bill requires alignment. It requires uh alignment between the president, the board of directors and trustees, the athletic directors, the donors, the media. I mean, the full strategy there. It requires all those pieces in space right there. Like, you're going to need those as this thing weighs in. You can't be afraid as institutions to um walk that path. All right, get those pieces together. Know who those people are in those spaces, from the donor space, from the media space, and from the commercial strategy space, that can play a role in making sure that was asked of from a president, from a board, from an AD, that you got this, and then you can basically get those individuals, the board, the trustees, the ADs, just get them. If this is football, all we gotta do is get them to the red zone. All right, get them to the red zone, and I think that's where we, as folks who in these spaces who have real drivable contacts, you get to there. So as we close this part two out here, man, I want to say this. HBCUs cannot keep trying to run uh these these power five playbooks, or group of five on a less than group of five budget. Um I believe that the playbook was built for institutions with different funding histories, um, stories, donor bases, and infrastructures, right? Those things are just different, and they've constantly evolved them each year. The new model is what we've seen from the SWAC. Owning your media is key. Everyone else, including the SWAC, truly own your merchandise. And all HBCUs, if you have a major classic, right? If you got a major classic, you gotta own it. And when I say own it, meaning present it to a group of individuals, a private company, a city, or whatever it is, to truly, truly put up the money behind it. Pay for it. It's your asset. Make them pay for it. Make them pay for it. You got the eyes there. Circle City Classic, Bayou Classic, Magic City Classic, Florida Classic, Soul Bowl, John Merritt Classic, you know, the classic in Memphis, Southern Heritage Classic. Got it. You got to sell this thing to these institutions, and you got to be willing to grow this every time. Beyond just getting the media rights deal, like beyond just getting a title sponsor for these things, it's the media deals. Again, because if these games are getting people 40,000 people inside a stadium at minimum, like that's a TV asset right there. That's a TV asset. That's money's lost because we're not turning that into a true revenue driver that's nationally viewed, right? I should be able to be in Spokane, Washington, and if I want to look at the Magic City Classic because Alabama A&M, Alabama State are rolling this year, or not rolling, doesn't matter. It's a game to look at, or if it's the Bayou Classic, or if it's the Florida Classic, or if it's the Soul Bowl, it doesn't matter. Like I should be able to be anywhere and look at that. All right. And ultimately, ideally, hopefully, I don't have to download an app to do it. Right now, you got HBCU Go that plays that role digitally for HBCUs. But again, when some people just tired of downloading apps, when you got a particular game that truly has buying power and selling power, we got to find a way to get that game on a standard network. Got to find a way. So own it, man. SWAC TV is the model because it owns its audience, its data, and its revenue. And the closing challenge for me is going to be this. Uh, what is the one move an HBCU AD, president, board, trustees can make in the next 12 months that proves the program of football is truly serious to them? What can they do? That's the question I'm going to pose to every HBCU out there, man, every HBCU supporter to ask upon their those three entities, to put them in this space. Do not ask for another press release, right? Ask for a move that shows we're about to start making serious moves towards being better, right? We want our top end talent in these sports to come back home to an HBCU. We got to give them something to come back home to. All right. All right. We got work to do. Final message: HBCU athletics does not have a talent problem. It does not have a cultural problem. It does not even really have an audience problem. It just has a structure problem. And the beauty thing about structure can and always will be fixed. It just comes down to, are we going to be aggressive enough and we are going to be patient enough to go do it? That's all we have on Indy Period here. Thank you for stepping in on this part 2 of the HBCU audit of Are You Hungry? I asked that question to everyone else. Again, that's what this thing is about. Are you hungry for greatness? Do you want more from your institution? Let's go require it from them. But what we require as supporters, we must also require of ourselves. All right. If we're going to require the institution to do X, Y, Z, you got to be willing to do it yourself. Don't ask the university. Don't ask the athletic department to do nothing that you yourself are not willing to help them do yourselves. All right. See you next time on Indy Period.